point of the drug policy is not to support the people who are drug users or who are involved in drug usage, but it's supposed to feed into some people's pockets, a group of people.
Thanks, Charles, for joining us and being part of Out of the Echo Chamber. We think it's really important to capture how people have come to change their mind on this topic and help us with thinking about what are the circumstances that help people change their mind about how drug reform should happen. And not everybody needs to be on board, but, you know, how do we bring a different perspective to drug reform, to drug policy, and how have you changed your mind?
Yeah, I think to answer the first part, how do we bring drug reform? I think it is about information. I think it is about educating. I think it is about having conversations. That is the first, part that I can, say how did it for me. Having the discourse, getting the opportunity to listen to other people's side of the story or getting to hear other perspectives different to what I know. I think that did a lot of good for me. Yeah. So
how has your perspective on this topic changed over the time?
I think what I've learned is that the existing drug policy hurts more than help the people that it is meant to it hurts more than help the people that it is meant to control in society or that it is about in society, or drug users, let me put it that way. So even though the intention is to help drug users, but it ends up hurting them more than helping them. And that's where I had the shift in paradigm, because getting to read some of the articles, some of the ethnographies about how some drug users, were being treated and how their families. And I learned about how there is a huge power structure, that the whole point of the drug policy is not to support the people who are drug users or who are involved in drug usage, but it's supposed to feed into some people's pockets, a group of people. And also getting to know about the fact that sometimes some of these drug reforms were actually racially motivated. It was meant to segregate or to, marginalize some group of people, to incarcerate some group of people. I was like, I didn't know all of this, and nobody ever told me this. So from that point, I started developing an empathy, trying to get into the mind space of, drug users. Feel what they go through and appreciate, their journeys. And I'm like, if I were a drug user, these policies would not change my drug behavior. And these are not the kind of support or help that I would want from anybody. So I just felt, yeah, there's a different way that things can be done, and hence the need for a drug policy reform.
Great. So the ethnographies were one thing that really helped you change your mind. Yeah. And then also understanding and having a kind of raising of your critical consciousness of the racialized history of these policies.
Yeah.
Is there anything, like, for people who want to engage in these conversations, are there approaches or are there ways of engaging in discussions around this that you think are particularly helpful for having what can be really tricky conversations about stuff that we have really, stigmatized views from? One thing, is there something that you can do in terms of the way that you approach it or how you talk about it with people that maybe aren't ready there or aren't there yet?
I think it takes understanding and empathy
Mm,
and appreciating that people are coming from different walks of life. People are coming from different cultural backgrounds. I came from a background where drug usage was very, very demonized. And I only got to know about the aspect of drug usage that looked terrible. Like the pictures that were created, the imagery that was created were like, if you use drugs, this is what is going to happen to you. But nobody told me about the other side of the story,
mm,
about some of the people who used drugs in history and who were like okay people. There was nothing wrong with them. The only people who were portrayed when we talked about drug usage was the guy in the streets who is now a junkie and all of that. But what about the guy who was, working in the office and he used drugs and he was perfect, right? So I think it is about meeting people from their level of understanding and having a discourse that, you know, um, factors in people's lived experiences, their cultures, and all of that. um, I think it helps a lot when people feel understood from, their perspective. Then you can, counter their perspective with a higher sort of perspective. But once you kind of dismiss people's perspective and maybe their experiences,
mm.
um, some sort of defensiveness, comes in and people don't learn or listen.
Yeah.
I had opportunity when I confronted, you particularly with that question that why should I care? Where I come from, we are dealing with malaria, we are dealing with cholera. Why should we begin to think about safe spaces for injection for drug users? And I remember you told me something about how we are spending as much money to fight um, drug usage or to combat drug usage, which could be invested into supporting people to use drugs safely. Because at the end of the day, people who use drugs are going to use drugs, whether we like it or not. And the best way we can help or support them is to make it safe for them to do. Um, yeah, so I think that kind of understanding people, you know, and we could change a lot of things in this world with having, discourse and dialogue.